Tonight, in this edition of the Primetime Newscast on Equinox Television, lecturers and students of the University of Douala are in dire need of infrastructure to be able to accommodate the growing student population. And also in this newscast, economic experts here in the littoral region are demanding a more realistic state budget this year 2014, plus what could be impeding the fight against corruption in the country. Our guest tells us more in the second part of this newscast. Good evening to you viewers. Welcome back from the weekend. You are watching the 6 p.m. newscast on Equinox Television. Let's begin right away here in the economic capital, Douala. The problem of lack of infrastructure in the university is still a major problem in the institution. The university is unable to accommodate the growing population of the said institution, and lectures are being held at times in open air and often at odd hours. For Hansen Chanji was at the University of Douala today and now tells us more in the following report.
At the University of Douala, there is a problem: lack of accommodation. The growing population of the university has led to congestion in lecture halls and at times no hall for lecture. As a result of this problem of accommodation, students are forced to be present in halls hours before time to secure a seat, and he who comes late is forced to climb through the roof or forget about it. Asir Nasi is a lecturer in the Faculty of Sciences in the University of Douala. He teaches analytical chemistry. The university don revealed to us that the problem of accommodation is becoming unbecoming in the institution. Classes clash daily. Master students hardly have a permanent lecture hall. Most of them are compelled to study in private colleges in town, where lectures are organized. The lecturer tells us that for the undergraduate program, the problem is generally low, though there are cases of congestion, but the postgraduate program go through nightmare daily. There is also the problem of laboratory, where over 3,000 students are destined to use a 35-capacity laboratory. That's not all. Most lecturers lack offices. The university don't continue. The consequences of this growing problem in the University of Douala are mild. He tells us lecturers are not able to cover the 80% of syllabus as required because most classes are postponed, then cancelled. The evaluation is also poor. Students produce poor scripts, which is the gateway to go back home with poor degrees. There is therefore the growing need for more infrastructures to be constructed in the University of Douala. If not, why not?
The difficulties of lecturers and students of the University of Douala. Meantime, investigations are underway to establish the cause of the fire incident that took place that was last Friday at the Ministry of Public Health in that part of the country. Roland Akong tells us in the following report that activities at the Public Health Ministry are being paralyzed in the process. His report.
Personnel of the Ministry of Public Health did not have access to their offices Monday. The judiciary was investigating the cause and material damage of the fire incident last Friday at the Department of Human Resources at the Ministry of Public Health. When we approached Yimgeng Moyo, an architect, to find out why fire incidents were recurrent in administrative buildings, he said many administrative buildings were constructed in the 60s, and as time passes, it is necessary to refurbish them to meet modern security exigencies. Some of the buildings are constructed without adequate safety measures.
Of course, we have these difficulties of the fire hydrants, which sometimes, they simply disappear because somebody has built a house on top of a fire hydrant or has built his private road on a fire hydrant.
The Department of Human Resources of the Ministry of Public Health was engulfed in flames Friday. and the exact cause of the inferno is not yet known.
Still in the central region of Cameroon, but this time around we spoke to some experts here in the economic capital Douala. The 2014 state budget has been adopted amidst contestations from the opposition political party, principally the Social Democratic Front. The budget put at 3,312 billion francs CFA is having a 76 billion increase compared to last year, that is the year 2013. Meantime, political analysts here in the economic capital Douala have described the 2014 budget as unrealistic. They argue that no explanations were so far advanced on how the revenue would be raised to cover the expected expenditure. Jacques Ekwekinge spoke to some political analysts and also economic experts in the city of Douala and compiled the following report.
Despite criticisms over the years, the 2014 draft state budget still puts expenditure far above revenue at 3,312 billion against 3,236 billion in 2013, representing an increase of 76 billion in absolute terms and 2.3% in relative terms. This budget increase is only apparent. In reality, it is more than largely absorbed by additional expenditure totaling approximately 150 billion francs CFA to be used to pay salaries of traditional rulers, the 25,000 newly recruited youths, and the senators.
We have been saying for years that what characterizes the budget, our national budget, is mainly opacity. Opacity because there's no clear line between expenditure and income. And most of the time, when people talk about budget, they mainly talk about expenditure, but they never talk about income. And the government excels in this as well.
The SDF parliamentary group argues that 5 days are not enough for the National Assembly to study programs and the budget for a whole nation and a whole year, but is staging a walkout the best solution.
We can blame SDF for mainly politicking, because that might just look like politicking. They should go beyond politics. They should, as they present themselves as the main opposition group, they should rally as many forces as possible within politics, the political framework, but also within the social framework.
Meanwhile, Dr. Pierre Alaka, public finance expert, thinks the SDF parliamentary group should be more representative in their action and be more concrete when it comes to decisions affecting the population. It should be noted that the largest share of the 2014 budget has been allocated to the presidency of the Republic, with the Senate having the least.
And it should be noted that the principal opposition political party in Cameroon, that is the Social Democratic Front, last weekend boycotted the adoption of the 2014 state budget. They argued that the time accorded MPs to study the 5 bills that were tabled to them by the government were too small. Now let's listen to one of the members of parliament of the Social Democratic Front. He spoke to our reporter in Yaoundé yesterday, Roland Akom.
The straw that finally broke the camel's back was the budget of the Senate. First of all, it was the investment part of it was empty. Nobody knows what those 3 billion will be used for. And you don't expect us to give a blank check to anybody, say we are giving you 3 billion without knowing what you will do for. You normally tell us in a program what you will do with the money. And secondly, they didn't even have the courtesy to come in front of Parliament to defend their budget, which the law requires. Even the presidency of the Republic sends people in to come and defend their budget. The Senate did not. There were members within the CPDM who were asking for a private, a secret ballot, because they wanted to express. The House said, no, it must be a public vote. Obviously, they didn't want to be seen to back what was common sense. So they voted against it, and we think we don't belong to such a group. That's why we walked out.
That was one of the parliamentarians of the Social Democratic Front for Bichinda Simon there, speaking to Yaoundé Base correspondent Roland Akong. Now, let's talk about the series of reports on the installation ceremonies of mayors in different localities across the country. This time around, the mayors of the Malantoen and also that of the Masangun localities of the Noon Division have been called or have been told to fulfill their campaign promises by tackling the problems of the local population. The senior divisional officer for the Noon Division was speaking while commissioning them into their functions. And Befokwa tells us more in the following report.
Boyomo Donatien, the senior divisional officer of the Noon Division, recently installed the municipal executives of the Malantoon and Masangun councils in the West region. After a speech in which he alliterated the priorities of Napujum Ibrahim, who was ascending to the duty of the mayor of the Malantoon Council, SDO Boyomo adorned the chief local administrator and his executives with their municipal attributes. Assuming control of the Malantoon Council, the executive representing the dominance of the UPC political party is faced with balancing the council's budgetary reserves, which stand lower than expected by 25%, being 397,256,000 CFA francs. With this remaining funds, the executives were called on to focus on implementing development projects to improve on the infrastructure of the municipality and balance its financial records. In a separate ceremony, the SDO of the Noon Division presided over the installation of the Masangun Council, also operating under his jurisdiction. After a speech in which he addressed not only the municipal executives, but the population as well, he urged the community to foster collaboration with their council administration, which he said was accountable to the residents of the district. The full commitment of the executives was completed after the relevant law recognizing their placement into office under the authority of the Ministry of Territorial Administration and Decentralization was pronounced. SDO Boyomo personally adorned the ascending mayor Mfupu Abubakar and his first and second assistants with their municipal attributes to the jubilation of well-wishers and inhabitants of the community commencing their 5-year tenure officially.
Now, researchers in the Semak region have been schooled on the proper ways of writing projects. It was within the framework of a 2-day capacity building seminar workshop that opened today at the St. Jerome's Catholic University here in the city of Douala. Pamela Ndukong was part of that workshop and now tells us more in the following report.
The 2-day workshop organized by African Research and Innovation Management Association, CARIMA, and its partners aim at enhancing capacities for developing proper research projects and adequate grants for research institutes. The workshop that saw the participation of persons from CEMAC regions was an opportunity for participants to be enlightened on where and how to write a good and excellent project. Whether young or old, researchers are always faced with challenges at gunpoint. Dr. Palme Musombe, a facilitator, told us more.
And one of those challenges for the young researcher especially is the publish or perish myth, because you must publish research to be able to advance in your grade.
Faced a very difficult problem regarding the funding of research. You may have a bright idea, but you need money to do your research.
How then can this problem be solved?
And the only way to publish is to be able to, first of all, do the research. And what would only guarantee that you are able to do good research is the idea, surely, but also you need some kind of support, funding.
Facilitators also cited that sometimes researchers assume that broad topics are good enough, but there are little details that need keen attention. These details are tips to writing proper research projects, especially for funding. Usually projects are being submitted, but only few of them are being financed.
Remember that the number of proposals that come in are usually very, very high compared to the number that they actually wish to fund.
At the end of the day, participants told us that they have a good knowledge of how to write a good and excellent project for funding.
Pamela Ndukong ending the report, which takes us right away to news out of our national boundaries. French troops who were recently mobilized to the Central African Republic would begin to disarm militias in the said country, as stated by the Defense Minister of France. Reports from the Central African Republic has stated that the presence of foreign troops in Bangui and the nearby towns is creating more tension in that part of Africa. Let's have the details with Franz Venkat.
To the cheers of locals, some of the 1,600 French soldiers deployed to the Central African Republic arrive in Bangui. The residents have been living in fear of sectarian violence that's left hundreds dead. France says without its intervention, that number would already have been in the thousands. The first priority for the troops, disarming former Seleka rebels who've been terrorizing the population.
For now we have patrolled, shown that we are present and strong, to show all these organized groups in these cities and forests that the time of impunity is over. So tomorrow, all will lay down their weapons, and that means if you don't lay them down, we will disarm you by force.
The violence hasn't been one-sided. Christian vigilante groups have responded to Seleka assaults by attacking Muslim neighborhoods in the capital. On Sunday, the Catholic Archbishop of Bangui urged Christians not to carry out revenge killings. 500,000 people have been displaced within the country. French soldiers have started moving into rural areas where much of the violence has taken place. French President François Hollande says they'll remain in the Central African Republic as long as necessary, backed up by the African Union's MISCA force, which will be increasing its presence from 3,500 to 6,000 troops.
That update there from the Central African Republic, bringing us to the end of this segment of the news. Up next is Talking Point. Thank you once again, viewers, for joining us tonight on Talking Point. For over 25 years, that is since President Biya took power, the rate of corruption has spread to the highest level in the country. In 2010, for instance, the anti-corruption agency revealed that the most corrupt institutions in the country were, first of all, the Ministry of Finance, followed by that of Justice, and also the police force. And it was almost a similar data that was published in the year 2013 as far as the facts and figures of the year or the corruption status in Cameroon in the year 2012 was concerned. So far, the police force was still occupying the first position, followed by the educational sector. Our guest tonight is a journalist. Good evening to you, Ms. Harriet Ekwe, and thank you so much for joining us tonight on Talking Point.
Thank you, Mimi Mefo.
So our question tonight, we are going to be looking at what could be impeding the fight against corruption in Cameroon. We have been talking about this over the years. Let's begin by finding out from the different reports that are published by the different anti-corruption agencies, what could, we see that the corruption situation in Cameroon is not changing. What could be the reason for that?
I think that there are three main reasons. The structure of the state, because when the IMF and the World Bank came in, they asked to reduce the number of civil servants, and there were cut downs on the salaries. So this was the first reason. The second one is the environment. Since everybody is trying to take his own part of the national cake, as they say, take and run. So this is a culture, and then what comes from the top of the state to the roots of the society, which means that corruption is everywhere from the top to the bottom. So far as this culture is really embedded in the administration, we cannot change anything unless those who are at the top of the administration of the state give another example of trying to rid the Cameroon out of the corruption.
Now talking about those at the top of the system of things, when we look at both the private and the public sector, we see that they are both corrupt, but it is more in the public sector in Cameroon.
Yes, because the public sector has the power. It's part of the state. If you need a signature. You cannot get it in the private sector. You need the administration to sign papers, to open doors, to give public markets, and you need to have these civil servants trying to introduce you. Now they say, if you want me to introduce you, then you have to pay for that, because you cannot, I'm unavoidable, you cannot go elsewhere and have the service you want. I am the one who can provide it, so you have to pay for that. And you will pay because you need it. So I think that the administration is the engine and the leading body of corruption, not the private sector. The private sector has to pay for that. If you want a market, if you want your file to be examined thoroughly, you have to pay, and you will do that because you have other people, other societies, other companies competing with you. So you have to be the best one with the help of these civil servants who have to decide.
So that our viewers could better understand, today Cameroon is joining the rest of the global community to commemorate the International Day for the Fight Against Corruption. And our focus is because the corruption situation in Cameroon is not changing. A recent report this year, 2013, that was precisely in the month of July, stated that the most corrupt corps is the judiciary, that's the police force. It's so curious. What are the implications in a country like Cameroon?
Yes, because when you go to justice, it's just this judiciarial body which can render justice. So you have to go to the court. You can take somebody to the court. You can be taken to the court, and you must make sure that you will win your case. And this is, you cannot find that everywhere. A doctor cannot do that. It's just the judges. So you have to pay. And even when you talk to lawyers, they'll tell you that sometimes we need the chairman of the tribunal to help us, because you can do all that you can, be the best lawyer in Cameroon, but if the judge has taken something, you'll be talking like a bird, but you'll not convince anybody.
And it's very disturbing enough for a society like Cameroon.
Yes, it's disturbing because we are poor, we are fighting against poverty, and we are still there pouring money in the bank accounts of some high-ranking civil servants. There are only a few people, some bodies of the administration, which have the privilege of making sure that they can have the money, and they'll lay pressure on you and you'll pay for the service you want. Even when you go to the hospitals, you have all these nurses asking for something because you have paid the doctor maybe, and they want also to be paid. And I had cases like that in public hospitals where I have to pay twice. I've paid to the doctor, I had to pay to the nurse. So
it starts from
even
above.
In education.
So it starts from above and then it gets to the...
No, it comes from above. Yes. Go to the roots.
So everybody is affected here. Everybody is affected.
Yes.
Now, ever since the launching of the Operation Hawk, that was almost close to a decade ago by the government. We are talking about the Opération Épervier, as it is commonly called in French. Can we say that the objective of this fight against corruption in Cameroon is being achieved? What could be your evaluation so far?
There are two distinguished situations. You have public funds embezzlements, that is Opération Épervier. And you have corruption where you don't have a file. I just say, okay, Mimi, you want to see the Prime Minister, then you should pay for that. I want 1 billion francs, CFA francs. When you have sometimes investors who want to come in to pour money for industries, companies, and so on, and provide jobs for thousands and thousands of people in Cameroon, and one man, a civil servant, will say, okay, you want to invest, let's say, 50 billion francs. I just want 1 billion for me. If you don't have it, then I cannot sign your file or your documents. or I cannot put them on the table of the minister. These civil servants are not, there is no accountability. You cannot know who has done that. Only the administration can know that at this time somebody came, let's say, to make cars, to build cars in our country, and we refused because one civil servant wanted money, and he will never go to the Opération Épervier or go to the jail. He will not be taken to court because this is not written somewhere. They are just working like that. The problem is, if there is no sanction on all this corruption around the administration, if there are no sanctions, then it will run and run and run again. Every year we'll make a report saying that those people are corrupt, and every year we'll
and nothing will
begin
be done
again.
to redress the situation. Now, the varied corruption fighting organs that have been put in place by the government, we are already counting more than 3 in the country so far. So can we say that they have been meeting their expectations?
Yes, sometimes when they make this report, I think it was in 2012, talking about a minister who took money off the road. I don't remember his name. Let's say they have given some names of ministers, some names of high-ranking civil servants, but till now those people have not been arrested. So there is something wrong. We don't know. It's an accountability. You are not accountable for what you have done, but those people who have embezzled, they can have writings, bank accounts, and so on. You can at least be a budget tracking, knowing that this has happened or not. But on corruption, in the case of corruption
in itself, there's no punishment, any concrete paper to show that this is the punishment that awaits somebody or any defaulter.
There are laws on corruption. There are laws. But the problem is they don't sue those people who have been corrupted, who have deprived our country of development in some economic sectors just because they wanted to get money for themselves and their families.
And so far it's not helping the fight against
corruption. And you have this Article 66, which has never been used, declaration of all your
assets.
Your assets, yes.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ariadeke, for joining us tonight on Talking Point. And we hope to have you some other time again. And to our viewers, we thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us in this edition of the Primetime Newscast on ATV. Up next is the Zone 2.